Hafa, good evening, and thanks for tuning in to the Pacific News Center. I'm Clint Regil.
And I'm Janella Carrera. Hafa, good evening. Topping your news tonight, Guam police have launched an investigation into an apparent suicide at the Dedido precinct yesterday morning. The man was being held on family violence charges when officers found his lifeless body with his shoelaces tied around his neck.
The family of Jason Martin is distraught, not only because of his death, but also
Guam Police spokesman Officer AJ Balahaja says the man, who's been identified by family members as James Martin, was taken into custody on assault and family violence charges. Police arrested Martin in the NCS Dedido area around 8:30 yesterday morning. As they do with all detainees, police placed him into one of the holding. Guam Police spokesman Officer AJ Balahaja says the man, who's been identified by family members as James Martin, was taken into custody on assault and family violence charges. Police arrested Martin in the NCS Dedido area around 8:30 yesterday morning. As they do with all detainees, police placed him into one of the holding cells at the Dedido precinct.
He was in a holding cell at Dedido precinct pending that transport. When the officers checked on him around 12 in the afternoon, they noticed he was non-responsive. They contacted the medics who transported the individual to GMH, where he was pronounced dead at 12:37.
According to Balahaja, Martin was found with shoelaces, believed to be his own, tied around his neck. But it's not clear in what position he was found.
It's very general. Was he lying on the ground? Was he hanging?
That's all part of the investigation. But you know, if you tie your socks or any type of material or shoelaces, belt on the actual bars, you can hurt yourself.
Yeah. Balahaja says there is no policy in place for GPD to confiscate items from arrestees or detainees before they are placed into holding cells, unless, of course, officers had a reason to believe the individual was suicidal.
There is no reason to believe that the individual was suicidal. We do not normally, as a practice, confiscate shoelaces and belts and what have you. Just for everybody. Again, unless a family member or somebody indicates that that person is suicidal, then we would definitely confiscate those things.
Balahaja says GPD's Criminal Investigative Section and Internal Affairs Division will be looking into the matter.
And hopefully we'll be able to come up with a better standard policy in regards to that. But again, there was no indication that the individual was suicidal.
An autopsy is expected to be performed on Martin, but no date has been set.
Meanwhile, the family of Jason Martin is not only mourning his loss, but also questioning the way his death is being handled. This afternoon, Martin's mother told PNC that she had yet to even see her son's body as she was turned away from the hospital twice, once last night and again at around noon today.
the family of Jason Martin is distraught, not only because of his death, but also because they have yet to be allowed to see his body. Martin died while in police custody in a holding cell in the Dedido precinct on Sunday. Police say they left him in the holding cell, and when they returned, they found him unconscious and unresponsive, with his shoelaces tied around his neck. Martin's mom says she wasn't informed about her son's death until 8:45 p.m. last night, even though he was pronounced dead at 12:37 p.m., nearly 8 hours earlier. Martin's mother, Nanette Eliam, a Pohnpeian woman, spoke through her niece, Rodelyn Roque Rosario, who translated.
Why didn't they call me around 1 or around that time when my son passed away to notify me?
Rosario says that they gathered family members and went to the hospital last night, but when they got there, they were turned away and told the medical examiner's office was closed.
They told us to come back Tuesday morning. And we asked, why can't it be Monday? They said it's a holiday, it's closed.
Rosario says they were then told today by GPD that they could see his body so that his mom could provide positive ID. But when they showed up to the hospital, they were again turned away because the medical examiner's office was closed. It should be noted that the medical examiner's office is its own entity with its own hours that are separate from the hospital's.
Just now my auntie just told me now, my son is not an animal, he's a human being. That's what she just told me.
Atur mentor,
She
arai
said
walai
now-
mo rime titar mentor taks arai kak mentor.
She,
Mename arai nan kakuya.
she said they took him, he was alive, and now he's dead. He's gone.
Targanta kan.
GPD PAO AJ Balahaja told PNC this afternoon that the family was not able to view Martin's body yesterday because the medical examiner's office was closed last night. However, the family says if they were notified sooner, they could have been able to see his body because they were told at the hospital that the medical examiner's office closed at 5 p.m.
While he's no longer an attorney general, Lenny Rapadas may find himself in some hot water over decisions he made while he was in office. In a lawsuit filed in Superior Court, Rapadas, along with 2 other assistant attorneys general, are being sued for defrauding the government of Guam. The lawsuit was filed by attorney William Bischoff against former Attorney General Lenny Rapadas, former Assistant AG John Weisenberger, and current Chief Prosecutor Phil Tydinko. However, they are all being sued in their personal capacities. Why? Bischoff believes that the 3 conspired to defraud the government by circumventing laws to allow attorney Pat Mason to work at the AG's office while still receiving his retirement annuity. Essentially, Bischoff says that he was able to prove that Mason was allowed to double dip. Double dipping is a term used in government when a retired GovGuam employee continues to work for the government while still collecting retirement benefits. Bischoff says that instead of hiring Mason as a classified employee, he was hired as an independent contractor, therefore allowing him to continue to receive his annual annuity of about $52,000 a year. Otherwise, Mason's annuity would have stopped. Now, Bischoff acknowledges that Mason's contract was first entered into in 2007 by then Attorney General Alicia Lim-Tiaco. There was no expiration date on the contract and therefore no precedent set for renewing the contract. But Bischoff points out that budget laws passed in 2011 and onward specifically state that any independent contractor position for the AG's office must be put out to bid. Those same laws also state that the only time the AG's office can hire an independent contractor is when they have no one else within their office who could perform the duties of that position. And according to Rapadas, Mason was the only person with the expertise to be able to handle the Civil Solicitors Division. Bischoff says this was done year after year. No procurement process, just an auto-renewal of Mason's contract through recertifications. Furthermore, Bischoff believes that the contention that Mason was providing services nobody else could provide was bogus. Bischoff attaches a copy of a FOIA request he made for the AG to list a record of services Mason provided in the last 5 years. The AG's office responded by saying that no such record exists. Bischoff says the defendants and Mason knew or should have known that what they were doing was illegal. He says that by signing off on the contract and recertifications, Rapadas was enabling Mason to evade laws that prohibited double dipping. Bischoff is asking that the 3 defendants be ordered to pay back the money they allegedly defrauded the government out of, up to $590,000. You can read the lawsuit online at pacificnewscenter.com.
In the wake of yet another death involving a person who is deaf at the hospital, American Sign Language interpreter Kirsten Bamba is speaking out about the Guam Memorial Hospital's policies in providing interpreters for those who are hard of hearing. PNC's Rizal Romanes has more in this report.
Imagine being in pain and not being able to communicate. That's what friends of Stanley, who was deaf, say he experienced at the Guam Memorial Hospital before he passed away.
I'm not sure if even Stanley or even the other deaf people that were there knew what was happening with Stanley. I think it's very, very important when a patient who is deaf or uses another language should be able to understand what's happening with their body at that time, where they're hurting, where the pain is.
One of Stanley's friend and American Sign Language interpreter, Kirsten Bamba, says this isn't the first time she filed a complaint with the hospital regarding the need for interpreters. She was told that GMH staff are trained to write messages by means of communicating when a patient is deaf. They informed PNC that the hospital did not provide Stanley with any interpreter during his week stay at GMH. They say maybe if he was given an interpreter, he would have been in better care.
I had 3 deaf friends that had passed away, but they had no interpreter. even when we didn't know what was wrong with them, or we asked the families to come, it was very disappointing, and it was very difficult for people to interpret the words.
Catherine Pukaigwi says if it was her and Stanley's position, she would want an interpreter right away.
Yeah, I also have deaf rights, and I am required an interpreter. Don't make me wait.
Bamba and Pukaigwi say they understand that the hospital has limited resources, but they believe it's GMH's responsibility to find an interpreter to make sure communication is accessible. Rosal Romanes, PNC News.
In response, GMH spokeswoman June Perez says the hospital takes all patient care concerns seriously and will be reviewing Stanley's case. She says GMH also extends its sincere condolences to Stanley's family and friends.
All right, let's head over to Blake Watson to see what's coming up in sports.
Hey, hope you enjoyed your day off. Happy MLK Day, by the way. For those of us who actually did have to work, check out sports because I worked hard just for you. Basketball and soccer today in sports. See what I did today in sports.